Sometimes I'm asked the question, I'm afraid that maybe I'm being admitted to hospice too early. What's the pros and cons? What's the downside? I don't want to sort of sign up for this if I really don't need it, versus what if I am on hospice and I'm there for longer than 6 months? How does that all work? I think the choice really becomes being admitted to hospice earlier in your terminal disease is far better than later. I think many reasons. One, that you get to reap the full benefit of the multidisciplinary team to focus attention on improving your symptoms, working with you for any kind of emotional, psychosocial, and spiritual needs. The idea of might I improve on hospice and what would happen does come up. And so patients will say, how long can I be on hospice? You know, can I be on until I die? Can I be on forever? So what we know is that after 6 months, Medicare has put into place in 2011 a recertification process. So after 6 months, the patient is required to be evaluated by someone at hospice, the medical director of hospice, to come out and do a face-to-face recertification visit. Sometimes those face-to-face visits are done by a nurse practitioner that works for the hospices, but ultimately the medical director at hospice needs to recertify that patient. After 6 months, those recertification periods are every 60 days. So every 60 days, we are looking at whether the patient's overall decline continues. Are we seeing signs of decline that we would anticipate seeing for whatever particular diagnosis the patient is being cared for? Interestingly, for certain types of diagnoses that are a little bit more challenging, and I think the challenging diagnoses such as heart disease, lung disease, some of the other kidney diseases, initially a patient may look like their prognosis is short. They get admitted to hospice, they actually improve, which again is not uncommon. If we see that sustained improvement, that for some reason the patient's disease trajectory now has changed. So some of those things that we'd be expecting to see with their heart disease or lung disease have really stabilized to the point with good care that we think their prognosis is longer than we had originally thought. Believe it or not, there are patients that can graduate from hospice. How beneficial, how neat of a thing to be able to graduate from hospice. On the front end, you've received all of those beneficial services at a time where it felt and you were being told that you were likely to have a very short prognosis. You fortunately were given more time, and you really got to a point that you no longer needed hospice care and that your disease had in some ways stabilized, so your prognosis was longer. You were not showing some of the telltale signs and symptoms that we would expect and what Medicare would expect us to be able to see with this decline. When we see that, and we see that going on for not just a few days, not just a few weeks, but for a longer period of time, we begin to feel pretty confident that if we graduated you from hospice care, that your likelihood would be that you're going to be okay for a while. You're probably going to have another setback down the road, and that would be an opportunity when those changes that we'll discuss with you and your family, when those happen, you can call us right back. We will be happy to re-enter your life. So, my recommendation always is better to err on the side, particularly if it appears that things are changing and you've been told by your physicians that your prognosis is short. You can always be admitted to hospice, get those benefits, begin to feel better. Improve your quality of life. And if you're one of those patients that actually has a longer period of stabilization, we can talk about graduating you from hospice and then what might happen with that and how that would look.